Listen up, cause I'm only saying I'm on the cover, don't me. About the book History's Like a Dead Aunt, it won't repeat itself, but it'll still give you some savage tea. About the author, Timothy Snyder is hella smart and wrote a bunch of books about 20th century European history. He won awards, bruh, also by Timothy Snyder, Nationalism, Marxism, and Modern Central Europe, a biography of Kazimierz Kel's Cross Wall Around the West, State Borders and Immigration Controls in the United States and Europe ed. Peter Andries, The Reconstruction of Nations Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, 1959-1999 Sketches from a Secret War, a Polish artist's mission to liberate Soviet Ukraine, The Red Prince. Secret Lives of a Habsburg Archduke, Bloodlands, Europe between Hitler and Stalin, Thinking the 20th Century with Tony Judd Stalin and Europe, Imitation and Domination, 1928-1953 ed. Ray Brandon, Ukrainian History, Russian Policy, and European Futures in Russian and Ukrainian, The Politics of Life and Death, and Zek the Balkans Dedication, History Does Not Repeat Itself. Still tell you the same old story, democracies fall, ethics collapse, and people get caught in the middle. Don't say I didn't warn you, Prology, History, and Tyranny. 1, don't get ahead of yourself, fam. 2, protect those institutions. K. 3, keep an eye out for one-party states that are low-key toxic. 4, take responsibility for your own face, brah. Remember to be professional with those ethics. 6, be cautious around paramilitaries. They're like the weird cousins of politics. 7, if you gotta be armed, at least be reflective about it. 8, stand out from the crowd. Don't be a sheep. 9, don't let your language get all salty and toxic. 10, truth, even when it's hard to swallow. 11, investigate those stories. Don't just take them at face value. 12, make eye contact in small talk. It's like basic human decency. 13, practice corporeal politics, how to navigate the physical world. 14, and establish a private life, because you can't be all in all the time. 15, contribute to good causes. Don't just sit around being a hater. 16, learn from others, even if they're from different countries. 17, for those red flags, someone's about to spew some toxic vibe. 18, stay calm when because that's when the real drama happens. 19, be a patriot, but not in a problematic way, bruh. 20, as brave as you can, even if it means against the grain. Epilogue history and liberty history ain't gonna repeat itself, but it'll still leave you with some valuable lessons. European history shows us that societies can fall, democracies can fail, ethics can get messy, and people can find themselves in unimaginable situations. Don't say I didn't warn you. The author Timothy Snyder is a professor at Yale University and has written like 10 books about 20th century European history. He's got some serious credentials, bruh, as unknown author, European politics, 1800s, the 19th century ed. Catherine Younger, Black Earth, the Holocaust is history and warning, like, don't even think the Gov is gonna save you, fam. Leszek Kołakowski, prologue, bro history doesn't repeat itself, does give you major life lessons. When founding fathers were low-key debating the American Constitution, they took notes from history. They knew the US Democratic Republic was gonna tank if they didn't do something, so they studied ancient Greece and Rome to avoid coming total oligarchs and emperors. Aristotle said inequality is a major problem, and Plato was all like demagogues exploit free speech for their own gain. The founding fathers were low-key trying to prevent tyranny in the US fam. They didn't want some dude or group of dudes just taking over power for themselves or bending laws for their own benefit. Later on, it's been a major debate whether the US is still a democracy or not. Think slave ownership and sexism. Western societies always look back at history when things get salty, bruh. If you're worried that the American experiment is getting threatened by tyranny, follow the founding fathers' lead and check out other countries' histories. Good news is we can draw from more recent examples than ancient Greece, fam. Just modern democracy's got its own issues. It's all like a never-ending cycle of decline. Since the American colonies left British monarchy in 1776, there were 3 major democratic moments. We in 1918, 45, and communism falling down in 1989. These new democracies failed, kind of like our own problems. History can be a major reality check. It can also give you warning signs, bruh. In the late 1800s, global trade was all about progress, but then came we, and people were all like called up, this ain't working. There's modern politics where leaders say they're repping the people's will, sounds legit until it turns out they just want power. European history in the 20s, 30s was straight savage. When right-wing authoritarianism and fascism took over, the Soviet Union came along in 1922, and it spread its model across Europe in the 40s. The 20th century was all about societies breaking down, democracies dying, ethics falling apart, and regular dudes finding themselves running death pits with guns. Fam, if you want to understand why, study the history of globalization, how people responded to inequality, and how they felt helpless against those in power. Listen up, fam, it's all about the people, right? They're low-key trying to give globalization a face and make it seem like it's complex issues or just a conspiracy against the nation, but really fascists were running things for a hot sack, leaving behind a sick intellectual legacy that's still super relevant today. No cap. Communists, on the other hand, ruled for way longer, nearly 7 decades in the Soviet Union and over 4 decades in Eastern Europe. They were all about establishing a disciplined party elite with control of reason, a monopoly on wisdom to guide society towards some predetermined future according to fixed laws of history. But, get it twisted, thinking our democracy is automatically protected from authoritarian threats is straight up wrong, no sauce. You gotta examine history to figure out the deep sources of tyranny and know how to respond, fam. We ain't wiser than Europeans who thought democracy would save the day when fascism, Nazism, communism took over in the 20th century. Our only advantage is that we can learn from their mistakes, bruh. This book's got 20 lessons from the past that'll help us navigate today's circumstances. So let's get this knowledge. Ain't no one time like now. Lesson, don't be a sheep, fam. Most of an authoritarian regime's power comes from people voluntarily handing it over without even asking. Anticipatory obedience is a major political tragedy, bruh. It's not just the rulers who know what they're doing. Sometimes it's the citizens too. After Hitler became prime minister in Germany or when communists took over in Czechoslovakia, people started making deals with new leaders without even realizing they were compromising their values. In early 1938, it was on the line. Austrians were all about anticipatory obedience, and that's what sealed the fate of Austrian Jews. Just swooped in, took over their homes, and forced them to clean up after themselves. It wasn't even a coordinated effort. Fam, locals who weren't part of the Nazi crew were chillin', thinking this was just another day at the office. Even Austrians who weren't down with the Nazis joined in on the property stealage, no cap. German troops showed up, it got real, Jewish homes started getting invaded, and people were reoden. That's when Austrian Jews began to lose their minds, fam. This kind of behavior taught Hitler what was possible, so he took note and moved forward with more regime change shenanigans. Unknown author you. So dude organized this gnarly pogrom called Kristallnacht in Nazi Germany, right? In 1941, when Germany went to war with the Soviet Union, the SS was all, hey, we got this, and started experimenting with mass murder without even getting permission from their bigwigs. They were like, if they wanted us to do it, we'll show them what's good. And it was way more brutal than Hitler could ever imagine. Anticipatory obedience is when you're all about adapting to new situations without even thinking, just go with the flow, no reflection needed. Only Germans are all about this, right? Wrong. Some American psychologist dude named Stanley Milgram was all, hey, I'm gonna test some theory, and he made an experiment in 1961 at Yale University. Around the same time Adolf Eichmann was getting tried for his Nazi shenanigans in Jerusalem, Milgram set up this fake learning experiment where people were all, shock this other dude with electricity, but it was all a setup, fam. People attached to the wires on the other side of the window were in on the scheme, and they just pretended to be all hurt. Meanwhile, the subjects thought they were applying those shocks to some dude who was learning, but really he was just playing along. These subjects were low-key traumatized, seeing people they didn't know getting all upset and pounding on the glass. But most of them were still all, hey, I'ma keep going, even when it seemed like someone was dying, and those who skipped out just ghosted without checking in on their fellow human beings. Milgram was all, he found so much obedience, he was like, nah, don't need to take the experiment to Germany. It's like people are willing to do whatever their new authority tells them to do, even if it means harming others. Word, defend your institutions, fam. They're the ones helping us keep it real, but you gotta put in the work too. Don't just sit there, speak up and take a side with what you care about, a court, a newspaper, a law, or a labor union. Institutions don't save themselves, they need our help. We're often like, institutions will handle it, but that's a major mistake. That's what some German Jews did when Hitler took over. They were all, hey, trusted the system, everything will be fine. But nope. February 2, 1933, this newspaper was publishing this editorial like they were all set, and then bam, the Nazi train came crashing in. Don't make that same mistake, fam. Take a stand, speak out, show your support for the institutions that matter. Unknown author, bruh, they ain't gonna come for ya. Like Hitler thought he could, no cap. They ain't about to strip German Jews of their rights, lock them up in ghettos, or let the mob go wild, fam. Chat, the powers that be are held back by some major factors and ain't trying to mess with the status quo, you feel? In terms of that, when you're a major player on the world stage, people start thinking about their own moral code and don't want to revert to all that drama from before. Most peeps, imps in 1933 were low-key thinking this way too, just like some of us today. The problem is when leaders who came through the system think they can just flip the script and destroy everything that made it work in the first place that's straight out of control. Gee, sometimes you gotta let institutions chill for a sec so you can rebuild them from scratch. That's what Hitler did with Gleichschaltung, and he crushed it in less than a year. By 1933, Germany was all about one party, and they were low-key making sure nobody opposed. Talk about a slippery slope. He even held elections and referendums to confirm their grip on power like a real puppet show. Some German Jews tried to play along hoppin' for the best, but it didn't work out, bruh. Watch out for those one-party systems, fam. The guys who took over in history were in all power from day one. They exploited a moment to squash the opposition and make life impossible for others. So keep it multi-party, defend your democracy, and vote in local elections while you can. Don't be that guy who gets caught slipping. Thomas Jefferson probably didn't say, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, but the vibes were there, you know. When we think about this saying today, we're all like, we're the good guys out for others, but the OGs knew it was more complicated, that Americans gotta protect themselves from other Americans who want to bring down the system. Wendell Phillips said it best, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and if you don't keep gathering that popular freedom, it's all gonna go stale. Modern European democracies tried to expand the franchise and make things more sustainable, but they often fell apart when a bunch of people just want to wreck the system. History ain't always kind, bruh. Low-key crazy how a single party can just take over, right? Like either they win election or it's a straight up coup tat, no cap. They're all like, we got this, 'cause they're hyped after winning big time. But then you got fascists and Nazis and communists getting lit in elections back in the 30s and 40s, and what happens next? You get a whole mess of drama, repression, and them salami tactics, slicing off opposition one by one, like, whoa. Most peeps are distracted, some get caught up in the system, and others just can't handle it. It's like when you're low-key trying to vibe with someone, but they're all at that toxic energy. And don't even get me started on how some people think voting is a one and done thing, like you do your thing, vote for whoever you want to vote for, and then that's it. But the truth is, peeps didn't realize what was going down in 1932 Germany, or when those Czechs and Slovaks voted for the Communist Party back in 46. We were all like, chill, democracy won't die on my watch, but no, reality checks in, and suddenly they're dealing with a whole new level of drama. It's the same thing in Russia. People low-key knew that 2010 was going to be their last free and fair election, but still got hyped for it. And now they're all about that authoritarian life. Meanwhile, in the US, we got our own problems to deal with oligarchy, income inequality, and a whole lot of systemic corruption. We got this free speech thing down pat where only the rich get to talk, but in reality, it's like a bad joke. And when the less popular party gets all up in every lever of power, that's when things start getting real. It's like they're all about that democracy life, but really they're just trying to maintain their grip on power. Another American proverb says, where annual elections end, tyranny begins. And right now, sounds hella true. Will we look back at 2016 like the Germans look back at 32? Only time will tell, bruh. But for now, we gotta fix this gerrymandered system so everyone gets one equal vote and each voice can be heard loud and clear. We gotta get paper ballots. Duh! As they can't be hacked and can always be recounted, you feel. And totes do this at the local and state levels, no cap. Like, take responsibility for the world's vibe, fam. The symbols we rock today are def, shapin, the future, so don't ignore the hate signs. 8. Swastikas and other racist stuff. Just remove it yourself or set an example for others to do the same. Life is political, not because people care about how you feel, because they react to what you do. Your little choices can literally make or break free and fair elections in the future. So don't be a hater. Use your words and actions to up, not tear down. Look at history. G. In the Soviet Union under Stalin, prosperous farmers were dehumanized on propaganda posters as pigs. It was all about control and power, fam. The peasants who were market for slaughter got next. was collectivization, and before you knew it, millions were dying, starving, or worse. Fast forward to Germany in the 30s, and Nazis started marking Jewish shops with paint. It was all about ethics. But, envy transformed into covetous plans, and before you knew it, Jews were basically gone, and people who just looked on, they were complicit too. So, we gotta be aware of the symbols we use, bruh. Can't just ignore them or make excuses. We gotta take action, set an example. The world is watching, and our choices matter. So, let's get to it, fam. Yes! Someday, you might get a chance to rep your squad with some dope symbols of loyalty, bruh. Just make sure they include everyone, or else it's a total snitch. Even the history of lapel pins is hella problematic, fam. In Nazi Germany back in 1933, people were rocking, yes, pins during elections and whatnot, and then Austria was all like, hey, let's give swastika pins to everyone, even if they didn't want to be Nazis. It was like a symbol of pride, but really it was just exclusion on steroids. And then there's the whole communism thing, bruh. People were all about the revolution in the past, but by the late 1900s it was low, key-stoked anymore. Yet public markers kept sustaining these tyrannical regimes like they were nobody's business. When Czechoslovak communists won elections and then took over in 1948, it was all good for a hot sec. Until Václav Havel came along and dropped some knowledge on the real deal. So, imagine this greengrocer who puts up a sign that says, workers of the world, unite, not cause he's down with the movement, but just to keep the man out of his grill. And then everyone else is all about doing the same, and next thing, the public sphere is all about showing loyalty. While resistance becomes so hard to fathom, Havel was all like, yo, we see that the real meaning of this slogan ain't what it says on paper. It's like a code, fam. You gotta play the game to keep the regime going. But what happens when nobody plays? Remember those professional ethics, bruh. Politicians setting a bad example means lawyers and judges gotta step up their A game. And then there's Hans Frank, the AUG lawyer who worked for Hitler during WE. It was all about them concentration camps, making posters and whatnot. Student said he needed so much paper make him all that it'd take down trees. Unknown author, bruv, that law was straight up for the squad, and what's good for the squad is defil the law, no cap. Lawyers in Germany were all like, laws are here to serve our conquest plans, and they convinced themselves laws weren't meant to stop them. You feel? Hitler's homie Arthur Sis Inquart, who ran Austria annexation, was a lawyer too, and he went on to run the Netherlands occupation. Were low-key running the show in Einsatzgruppen, where they did all sorts of mass murder stuff. Doctors in Germany were experimenting on T-Pel in concentration camps like Nobuno. Businessmen from IG, Farben were exploiting concentration camp inmates. Jews in ghettos and POBs. It's wild how corrupt some peeps are. Government civil servants, from ministers to secretaries, were all about that life, overseeing and recording the whole thing. If learned go hard on execution without trial, doctors didn't do surgery without consent, businessmen didn't enable slavery, and bureaucrats didn't handle murder paperwork, Nazi regime wouldn't have been able to keep it 100. Professions can create convo about ethics when it's just you visgov, but when groups get together, they can get all powerful and stuff. Lawyers are all about their ethics. They might do some wild things when the situation gets real, and don't even get me started on paramilitaries, bruv. Dudes with guns start wearing uniforms and marching with torches and pics of a leader. It's like game over. Governments are always trying to monopolize violence, but that's not how politics work. Fam. Only Gov can use force, then we wouldn't have any issues. But when other groups get in on the action, it's all messed up. That's why some PPL try to undermine democracy and the rule of law by funding violent orgs. These orgs might start as a paramilitary wing or a politician's personal bodyguard, but they usually turn out to be some shady citizens initiative. Armed groups can degrade the whole political game. It's not even worth playing anymore. Guys, it's unknown author here, and why I'm even written this, but you gotta know about them extremist groups from forever ago. So there's these violent right-wing groups like the Iron Guard in Romania or the Arrow Cross in Hungary that's literally terrified their enemies. Stormtroopers started out as security people at Hitler's rallies, but soon they were making it rain blood and terror everywhere they went. Got so good at intimidating and manipulating people that they helped the Nazi Party win some parliamentary elections in 1932 and 1930, in Austria in 1938. It's like the secret army just took advantage of no one showing up to loot, beat, and humiliate Jews. That's when the Nazi Party realized they could get away with murdering their enemies without any real consequences. Came the Schutzstaffel. These dudes were literally running wild in German concentration camps, doing whatever the heck they wanted 'cause there's no rules. Fast forward to UAD2, and this took this lawlessness on the road by terrorizing whole European countries under German occupation. Here's the thing, it's not like they just showed up one day and started doing it. They started as these super sketchy merc groups that nobody was really mad about 'cause Americans already did it 4 years ago. Anyway, so there's this president and has all trying to be like a dictator or something. He ordered his own security team to clear out anyone who disagreed with him, even if it meant getting no love at the rally from the crowd. Like, he's trying to create these mobs that do his dirty work for him. These riots were basically the most basic form of mob violence, but they worked 'cause people are stupid and willing to follow whatever the leader says. Why you gotta be all like a mindless sheep and yell "Hooza" if someone disagrees with you. Maybe it's time to reflect on our actions and think about whether or not you actually want to be part of this cult. So, like, what can we learn from history? Typically, authoritarian regimes are super into creating these special police forces that get to be super violent and kill whoever they want. Nazi Germany was literally the ultimate example of how this works. Yeah, I'll tell you about those sicko regimes, fam. Remember when the Soviets were all about that terror life in the 30s, 40s, and the Nazis? Bruh, they went hard on those European Jews from 1945. But, like, for a sec that these squads of death operated solo, okay? They needed some real backup, regular cops and soldiers for real. With all that bloodshed wouldn't have been possible. In the Soviet Union, if it was low-key genocidal recording, like 682K executions, most of which were peasants or minorities getting shook by the state. It's wild to think about how centralized and organized it was with just a few men executing all those neck shots. Basically, they had thousands of murders on their conscience, no cap. Even though, low-key hero cops refused to participate, the Naivids still needed that manpower from local police forces, lawyers, and civil servants. Yeah. Like a state of emergency where everyone had to play by the NKVD's rules. And they weren't even the main perpetrators, but they provided all the necessary muscle. When it comes to the Nazi Holocaust, we think of Auschwitz, right? Like, that was just a way for Germans to pretend they didn't know what went down behind those gates. The truth is, it started with some sick shootings in Eastern Europe, shooting pits. Ain't no one prepared for that. And, some commanders got caught and tried at Nuremberg and later in German courts. But, let's be real, even those trials were what? Because they minimized the scope of the whole thing. It wasn't just us commanders who killed people, thousands of regular soldiers did too. Kept going on, and all these massive shootings, more than 30K Jews murdered outside Kyiv alone, and here's the T, regular cops were responsible for way more Jewish murders than those Einsatzgruppen squads. Some just went along with orders because they didn't want to be extra, others kills they were basic, and some even did out of fear. But, like without conformists, all that evil would have been impossible. So, and out fam, someone's gotta shake things up. You might feel weird doing something different, but without it, you ain't free. Remember Rosa Parks, who started a movement with her sick act of defiance. Set an example, the norm is broken and others will follow. After World War I, Europeans and Americans were all like, yes, we're better now. But for real, without confronting the dark past, can't move forward. Hey, listen up fam. Unknown author here, and I'm about to spill the tea on how the OGs created those myths of righteous resistance against Hitler. So, like, back in the 1930s, Europe was all about accommodation and commemoration for that Nazi vibe. But by 1940, most peeps had finally woken up and were low-key vibbing with Hitler's squad, Charles Lindbergh and other influential men. Americans were all about America first and not wanting to get involved. You know who we remember and reppin' today? The ones who didn't change their minds when the world around them did. They're like the AUG rebels, eccentric, insane, or whatever, but they kept it 100 and never compromised. That's what we admire about them. Anyway, before the Second World War even started, Europe was all in with right-wing authoritarianism. Italy was first becoming a fascist state in 1922, and then Germany had some serious pullovers. Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria were all about that Nazi life. Fast forward to March 1938, and the great powers were like, no, we got this, when Hitler annexed Austria. And by September 1938, France, Italy, and Britain, led by Neville Chamberlain, were all good with Nazi Germany taking over Czechoslovakia. Talk about a collective shrug. In summer 1939, the Soviet Union was like, peace out in Poland, but then they joined forces with Hitler and the Red Army invaded Poland. The Polish government was all like, we're in this now, and Britain and France were forced to get involved. Germany, meanwhile, had some serious juice food and fuel from the Soviet Union and took over Norway, Netherlands, and even France by 1940. The British were left scrambling, evacuating most of their troops at Dunkirk, and Winston Churchill was like, we got this as he became PM. But Britain was solo fam. They had no real wins or allies. Just showed up for Poland because that's what they did, support the underdog. Hitler was all about dividing the world into spheres of interest, not exactly on a collision course with Britain. Churchill was like, nah, we good, and told France to keep it moving, even though Hitler expected him to fold. Churchill called it when it saw it. The Battle of Britain was coming, and he went hard. The German Luftwaffe started bombing cities, but Churchill was all about it living or dying fam. Called it a good time because that's what he said it was. But in reality, it was some intense stuff. Churchill helped define Britain as this proud people who'd resist evil no matter what. He put the pedal to the metal and took charge. Tiba, this whole we thing was lit. Churchill was Loki the goat, holding it down for the Brits while Hitler was all like, let's invade Poland and see what happens. But Churchill was all, nah bruh, holding back the Luftwaffe and keeping the airwaves secure. Control, even Hitler would have been all, wait, what? About invading Britain. Churchill did what no one else could do, fam. He kept it 100, refusing to cave in, forcing Hitler to change his plans. The plan was to hit the Soviets next, but Churchill was all, hold up, let's get this Brit party started, and kept the West on high alert. Meanwhile, Japan was like, yes, let's bomb Pearl Harbor and get the US involved. And suddenly we got a whole coalition going on with Moscow, Washington, and London. It was a real squad goal, TB, but for real though, if Churchill hadn't stepped up in 1940, there would have been no war to fight. He was all, I'ma write my own history books, but honestly, it's kind of weird how he wrote himself into the narrative like that. Fast forward to Poland, and it was a whole mess. Poles were low-key fighting since September 1939, but they got overwhelmed by the Germans. Warsaw was a hot mess with air raids killing 25 people, and Teresa Prikora was all, what's good fam? Standing out among her friends and family, Teresa saw that everyone was only looking out for themselves. She was all about putting others first. She snuck into the Warsaw ghetto like 5 times, bringing food and meds to Jews she knew, and did no risking it all for a good cause. In 1942, she even got her bro's friend to escape Rilma VP. In summary, Churchill won ooh-wee, but he also had some major props for his squad goals. Girls, fam, and bro get out of Dodge. So, like, in the Warsaw ghetto that summer, the Nazis were all great action, and they're deporting 265 key Jews to their death factory at Treblinka, and they're also killing like 10 key Jews in the ghetto. Teresa is low-key a hero fam. She saves a whole family from getting killed. Later on, she becomes a historian and writes about the Holocaust and all the other people who helped out Jews, but she's all, nah, I'm good, and doesn't want to write about herself. People ask her to talk about her life. She's like, Keek, it was normal brew. From where I'm coming from, though, it seems super exceptional what she did. She stands out, you feel? Victor Klemperer is a scholar and all that jazz, and he uses his linguistic skills to take down Nazi propaganda. He's like, watch it with the language, Hitler, because your whole people always meant some people thing is straight up racist. And when you say encounters are always struggles, that's just code for trolling the narrative. When T-Peel try to think critically, that's defamation. Bruh. Politicians are always spewing their cliches on TV and repeating them like robots. All about making the visual media seem challenging, but really, it's just a bunch of moving pictures. We get hit with wave after wave of info, but we never actually see the big picture. We need words and concepts to make sense of things, but when we're too caught up in the visuals, that gets lost. Watching news is just sometimes it's staring at someone who's also looking at a screen. We've all kind of fallen into this collective trance, you know. It's been like over half a century since classic novels warned us about screens taking over and books getting suppressed. Like Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 and George Orwell's 1984 predicted the whole dystopian thing. Fahrenheit, firemen burn books and people watch interactive TV. 1984, books are banned and TV is all two-way, so the Gov can spy on people at all times. The language in visual media gets super constrained to keep us from thinking about anything deeper. And like, official dictionary keeps getting updated to limit our vocabulary even more. Staring at screens might be unavoidable, but if we can't use our brains for something else, what's the point? Loki repeat every single thing that's been said in the daily news, and I'm over it. No need for bigger framework, right? Gotta read more books or whatever, because thinking critically is hard, and so get your screens out of your room and surround yourself with some actual knowledge. Feel me? Like, those old guys Orwell and Bradbury couldn't even do this, but we're all about that life. What's good to read? That makes you think about shady situations and figure out what others are trying to pull is lit fight. Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov or Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being might be the way to go. If you're feeling lazy, Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here is like super basic. Philip Roth's The Plot Against America is fire though. And then there's G. Keats. There's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is literally a whole novel about tyranny and resistance. Low-key millions of young Americans have read it, so it must be true, right? If you didn't get the memo or your squad did, but you're still trying to figure it out, then yeah, reread it. Some old texts that are actually relevant to this convo are Politics, The English Language by George Orwell, 1946, The Language of the Third Reich by Victor Klemper, 1947, of Totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt, 1950, Rebel by Albert K, 1951, The Captive Mind by Shiesomiya Oz, 1953, The Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel, 1978, Conservative, Liberal, Socialist by Leszek Kołakowski, 1978, The Uses of Adversity by Timothy Garton Ash, 1989, The Burden of Responsibility by 1998, Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning, 1992, Nothing is True and Everything is Possible by Peter Pomerantsev, 2014. Christians gotta get back to the foundational book, which is still hella relevant, B2O. Jesus was all about keeping it real. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. We should be humble, bruh, and not just take whatever power feeds you, cause if you exalt yourself, you get brought back down. Also, facts matter. Family, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Believe in what's real. Don't abandon facts, or you're basically submit to a tyranny where no one can call bees on anyone because there's no basis for it. Of that. That's like basic math, bro. If nothing is true, then everything's just spectacle. Whoever pays with the biggest wallet gets to dictate the narrative, and if you're not chillin' with the realty, you're basically giving up. Reality can feel comfy at first, but trust me, it's your demise as an individual, and that means any political system that relies on individualism is gonna crumble like a house of cards. Observers of totalitarianism would be hella annoyed if they saw this happen. There are 4 modes where truth dies, open hostility to verifiable reality, presenting lies as facts, and the final mode we're witnessing right now. The first mode is basically just presenting B's as facts like it's real news. So like this guy Unknown Author is low-key exposing the tea on how our president operates. He's all about spreading factual claims at a sick rate and making them sound legit even if they're straight up what. It's like 78% of his claims are false. Fam, this level of dishonesty is so wild that it makes you wonder if he's even trying to keep it real. Anyway, the guy's got a few tricks up his sleeve. I'm talking about some major shade. He uses these low-key manipulative tactics, like calling out fake news and stuff, to make people believe whatever narrative he's pushing. Like, he'll take something real and turn it into a meme or something just to keep the vibes going. But what's even more hella problematic is how this guy uses repetition, fam. He's all about chanting that same old rhetoric over and over again until you start believing it. Like, he'll say something straight up ridiculous, but repeat it so many times, you start thinking it's real. That's some major mind control right there. And then there's the whole magical thinking thing, bruh. This guy just goes around spouting all these contradictory claims and expecting people to be like, yes, I believe in that too. It's like he's just making stuff up left and right, but people are so caught up in the hype that they don't even question it. But here's the thing, when you're living with this level of dishonesty and deceit, it starts to seep into your everyday life. You start thinking that maybe, just maybe, this dude is right. And that's when things are really hella scary, fam. Klemperer, a German philosopher and all-around truth teller, was like, hold up, bro. Major concerns here. He saw how this kind of thinking could lead to some serious problems, like the loss of friends over who was right or wrong. Like, when you're so caught up in your own reality that you forget what's real and what's not. So, yeah, Unknown Author is hella onto something here. He's exposing the tea on how our president operates, and it's some major shade. But at the end of the day, it's all about keeping it real, fam. Unknown Author brew, like professors and students were low Nazi, becoming total iron guards, right? First, they weren't even Nazis, but then they get caught up in the ideology and we all don't fully agree, but I'm down with the Jews and stuff. It was hella problematic. By the end of it, only a few of us were still woke. Go's goal was to expose how propaganda is actually pretty wild when you think about it, but also how normal it seems for people who just give up. A known author like George Orwell already dropped knowledge on Double a Think 7 decades ago, so this post-truth stuff ain't nothing new. Just the fascist vibes of denying truth and all that jazz. Fascists hate small truths, love their slogans, and create these crazy myths instead of facts or journalism. Use radio to spread propaganda like wildfire. And now we got post-truth, which is basically pre-fascism. A known author, 11 Investigate Fam. Don't just take what's on the internet at face value. Some sites are straight trash. Learn about those that expose propaganda campaigns. Some have come from abroad. Be responsible with what you share online because it can harm people. People ask, what is truth? They're usually just trying not to do anything. Generic cynicism is so extra. Unknown author, the truth is your ability to discern facts makes you a boss. Our collective trust in common knowledge keeps society from going down the drain. Investigating is like building with legit blocks, while haters who dislike investigators are potential tyrants waiting to happen. This president was low-key trying to suppress free speech by banning reporters and stirring up hate for journalists. Wild how close we're to some dark times. Unknown author, like when this president said American media has been unbelievably dishonest, it was a clear move to shut down criticism. He even banned reporters from his rallies and made public figures diss journalists. If you want to stay woke, learn about sites that expose propaganda and don't just take what's online at face value. Be responsible with your own truth, and let's keep society from going full on fascist. Hitler was Loki the Og troll, right? Hit his enemies with fact-checking allies to make M look bad, and he loved how the internet was his baff for getting deets wrong and spewing it all over the net. 1971, Hannah Arendt was all like, hey, facts are real, bruh, and they can take down a liar no matter what. But now, with computers and all that jazz, she'd be hella wrong. Fast forward to 2016, and it's all about the gram. People were totes confused when they had to actually talk to humans instead of just scrolling through Facebook. It was like, hello, we're talking politics now. Meanwhile, on the internet, these online tribes form, like Invisible and all that, with their own twisted views. Yeah, there's a major conspiracy theory about how they keep us stuck in this loop. We need actual journalists who can do real reporting, not just echo chambers. Like, what does it mean when the president is hella extra about women being kite home and stuff? What's good with all these companies going bankrupt and him getting cash from shady Russia and Kazakhstan dudes? We can get that info from various sources, but when we learn it on a screen, we're all about the drama. Reality TV is where it's at now. If you see a vid of Hitler doing some Cossack dance, you'll just be like, yo, do the same thing with him wearing a bear suit. But real journalists help us break down what's going on and make sense of it all. However, research and writing takes actual effort and R's, so don't diss the mainstream media just yet. They're not even mainstream no more. They're just mad at each other. Listen up, Yaz, mainstream media is a total snooze fest. Fam, journalism is low-key lit, so try doing it yourself, okay? Write a fire article, travel, interview people, keep it 100 with sources, do actual research, fact check everything, and work on the clock like a boss. If you're hella passionate about this, start a blog, cause that's what real journalists do. Journalists ain't perfect. Neither are anyone else in any job. But when you gotta adhere to journalistic ethics, straight fire, we pay for plumbers and mechanics, but we expect news on the low. Compute fam. If you want to make informed decisions, you got to put in the real work. Leszek Kołakowski was a total ug, spoke truth to power in Poland, lost his job and couldn't publish. Hannah Arendt's came from this dope pamphlet, We Refugees. She wrote it after surviving a Nazi regime fam. Her Klemper was like the ultimate hidden diary writer under Nazi rule, and now we remember him for keeping it real. Václav Havel dedicated that essay, The Power of the Powerless, to some dude who got interrogated by communist cops and died shortly after. Communist Czechoslovakia, they had to circulate this pamphlet like it was hot because it was a total dissent move. Havel said if the system is built on lies, then live-in truth is the ultimate threat. We're all publishers now, fam, so we gotta take responsibility for what's real and what's not. If you fact check, you ain't spreading fake news to your squad. If you follow real journalists, you can share that knowledge with others. If you only retweet humans who do their due diligence, you're less likely to get played by bots and trolls. We might not see the harm we cause when we publish falsehoods, but fam, it's real damage. Don't think you're all good just 'cause you ain't harassing nobody on the internet. Know what I'm saying? We're talking about doing harm to people's minds online, but we can avoid that. Same vibes as when you drive a car, you see the other driver and you don't want to crash, right? So yeah, either you ain't facing nobody on the computer or action still got consequences, feel me? You keep it real and respectful online, others will too. And maybe can turn that internet into something more than a hot mess. Eye contact and small talk, bruh. It's not just about being polite. It's about being a good citizen and respecting the people around you. It's also about staying connected to reality and breaking down them social barriers. Don't want to be in a culture where everybody's all salty and judgy. Lol. You gotta know what's going on in our own mind if you want to take a stand. So yeah, tyrants have been popping up left and right in Europe for real, but the thing is, most people remember how their neighbors treated them when they were under repression. A simple smile or handshake became super significant, you feel. People looked away or avoided you, fear was real. Nowadays, it's hard to know who's getting threatened or not in us, but affirming everybody's good for the vibes, and for all that resistance stuff, I've got to find common ground with people who ain't got your back on everything. Step out of our comfort zone and meet new peeps and maybe even march with, can't do it just online, fam. Tyrants need to feel consequences in the real world, not just on TikTok. Solidarity was a real movement in Poland back in the day where workers, professionals, and even the Roman Catholic Church came together to take down communism. We could learn from that for sure. Yaz, let me give you the tea on secular groups. Okay, so back in the day, communism was all up in people's grill and its leaders learned some hard lessons, fam. 1968, they went hard on students who were protesting, and in 1970, it was workers' turn to get roasted when a strike in GDASK got squashed. In 1976, intellectuals and professionals formed a group to help out the working class. People who were getting played by the gov, and they made sure everyone was low-key on the same page. Fast forward to 1980, and workers on the Baltic coast were all about striking up a union with lawyers, scholars, and other cool cats. Guess what? It worked. Gee, they got a free labor union, and the gov had to start respecting human rights, too. 10 million people joined, and it was lit strikes, marches, demos galore. But then, in 1981, the communists were all, nah, we ain't having that, and they put down the movement with martial law, boo. 8 years later, when they needed some negotiating partners, they had to swallow their pride and go back to solidarity, and that's when it got real. Fam solidarity was all about keeping it real, made sure elections were on the table. They won, and that was the beginning of the end for communism in Poland, Eastern Europe, and the Soviet Union, period. Now, let's talk about how to keep your private life private, okay? You gotta draw that line between what you share with the world and what you keep to yourself. Don't be a simp, scrub that computer of malware, and for real, email is just skywriting, use it less or switch to alternative internet vibes. And don't even get me started on social media, fam. Personal exchanges gotta happen, Earl, in real life, or else you're just getting played by the algorithm. If you're dealing with some drama in your personal life, resolve it ASAP, okay? Don't let nobody come for you, no hooks, fam. Now, what's up with Hannah Arendt and totalitarianism, though? She was all about how the gov erases that difference between private and public life. We're free only when we control who knows what about us and when, okay? And then there's this whole email thing. It's not just a thing of the past, fam. If you're getting played by someone or an institution, privacy is gone, gee. Can't even act in the present or plan for the future if nobody knows what they're doing. Word is, the 2016 campaign was all about email disinfo, bombs, words written in one situation don't apply in another, fam. If you let people pierce your privacy, they can humiliate you and disrupt your life on demand. So, be careful out there, fam. No one's private life can survive public exposure, especially when it comes to hostile directs. Keep your wits about you and don't let anyone come for you without a fight. Yes. Fam, listen up. Known authors, got some tea for ya? So, trying to take info out of its context and drop it in another spot. That's straight up falsification, G. And bruh, when media started playing those email bombs like they were news, that was low-key a betrayal of their own mission. Most journalists were all and didn't even try to explain why people were saying or reading that stuff back then. And while the media was all about spreading them privacy violations like they were some juicy celebrity gossip, they got distracted from the real tea and instead indulged in other people's drama for the sake of clicks. Ernst said it best, our hunger for secrets is straight up political, fam. Totalitarianism takes away the distinction between private and public spaces, not just to control individuals, but also to turn society into a wild conspiracy theory fest. get so caught up in thinking there's some hidden reality or dark conspiracy going on that we forget about facts and interpretations. These email bombs prove that even when what was revealed is super irrelevant, it becomes the story, bruh. To news media are way worse at this than fashion or sports reporters. At least they know not to get too extra with the private stuff. When we start paying attention to random drama that's just a bunch of bees, we're participating in the demise of our own political order. We might feel like we're just going along with everyone else, but yeah, that's basically what Arendt called it, a full-on mob situation, and try to solve this problem on our own by securing our own computers or supporting organizations that care about human rights. But honestly, the best way is to contribute to good causes, fam. Involved with orgs that align with your vibe, set up autopay for a charity or two, and know you're making a difference. It's straight up satisfying to know you're helping others do good, even if the world gets all shook up. And let's be real, many of us can afford to support some of the thousands of charities out there that are doing real work. Okay, so like freedom is literally about keeping it moving and making your own moves you feel. It's all about doing stuff that's actually interesting to you and your squad, fam. Clav Havel, this Czech dissident thinker dude, was all about brewing good beer, and he was like, hey, y'all gotta find common ground with other peeps who vibe with you. When we take pride in what we're doing, connect with others who are low-key into it too, that's when civil society is born, bruh. Sharing a goal or project with others teaches us to trust people outside our tight, knit circle of friends and fam. Like, we can't just rely on the same old crew all the time. We gotta expand our horizons, you know? This capacity for trust and learning can make life less whack and more democratic, and it's all about creating that civil society, no cap. The anti-communist dissidents of Eastern Europe knew a thing or two about freedom. They were like, hey, even non-political stuff can be an expression of our freedom. Communists hated NGOs, charities, and whatnot. They'd control them and turn them into tools for their own agenda. Fascists had this whole Concord, where every apparatist system going on, reactive tied to the party. Stay days, authoritarians, same energy. They're all about squashing free associations and NGOs. So yeah, learn other countries, fam. Keep it moving abroad or make new friends who never had a similar experience. Don't get too caught up in your own country's drama. The us is just part of a bigger trend, and no one country can do it alone. Passports. Last blitz are key. By the way, let's talk about American politics, okay? Before the president got elected, journalists were hella wrong about him. They thought he'd get stopped by some fine American institution or another. East Europeans and those who study Eastern Europe were like, nah bro, we've seen this before. Ukrainian and Russian journalists saw more to the game than American pollsters did. When it came down to it, Americans seemed extra slow to react to cyber war and fake news. Ukrainians, on the other hand, knew how to call out disinformation like a boss. When Russia deployed the same tactics against Ukraine as they did against the US later on. When Russian media spread that false story about Ukrainian troops crucifying a kid, the Ukrainian response was on point, fam. So yeah, next time someone tells you American politics is all it's cracked up to be, just remember other countries got this, Yaz. So like, Americans are low-key spreading dispropaganda, right? Ukrainians were all about that win life, while the Americans got served hard by Russia's failed bid for regime change in Ukraine. But on the flip side, they scored big with their preferred candidate in the US. Now, this is totes a red flag, fam. History used to be moving from west to east, but now it's all about that east to west vibe. Whatever goes down here seems to happen first globally, which is like super concerning. The fact that most Americans are hella clueless when it comes to passports is like a major problem for democracy. They're always going on a defending freedom without even getting in a passport because they want to de-defending or whatever. But that's like, so not the point. Not the point. Geez, the fight ain't over yet. And we need to keep our eyes open to the world around us. Know what I'm saying? So yeah, passports are actually liberating because they let you explore new places, meet new peeps, and see how others tackle similar issues. We gotta be on high alert for them. Dangerous words, extremism and terrorism. Careful with that emergency talk. 2, it's just a cop-out to control people. And can we please stop getting all salty about patriotic vocab? Time to give the Nazis some shade, especially Carl Schmitt, who was all about destroying rules by exploding the idea of the exception. So when politicians say terrorism is an actual danger, I'm here for it. But when they try to convince us that we need to trade freedom for safety, we should be like, no cap. There's no necessary trade-off. You can have one or without loosen the other. If someone's all, you gotta sacrifice liberty for security, they're just trying to deny you both G's. It's easy to get caught up in that comfy feeling submission, but it ain't the same as actual safety. And freedom might feel a little uncomfortable, but that o'nees ain't deadly. Can have choices where we increase both freedom and safety, like breaking free from an abusive relationship or leaving a fascist state. It's on the gov to make sure we don't sacrifice both our liberties and security at once. Let's hope they're doing their job. Okay, let me break it down for extremism ain't nothing but a buzzword tyrants use to keep you in line. They just mean PPL who diss the mainstream. What they say is mainstream at that exact sec to justify why they are doing what they doing. Like back in the day, people who resisted fascism or communism were straight up called extremists by the tyrants themselves. Now modern regimes like Russia use extremism laws to squash anyone who's all I got a problem or policies. That means basically everything but tyranny itself. Don't me fam when the unthinkable happens, stay calm. Nowadays, tyranny is all about terror management. They exploit these events to consolidate power, silence opposition. For the Reichstag fire was like this wild moment where Hitler's Gov, which started out democratic B22 became a straight up Nazi regime. It's the example of terror management. So on Feb 27, 1933, the German Parliament building caught fire in Berlin. We don't know who did it today or not, but we do know Hitler saw it as an opportunity to say there will be no mercy now. Today, he gets a decree suspended all German citizens' rights. They can be detained by the police for just being around the wrong people. Nazi party wins parliamentary elections. Cause of that fire hits everyone with their authoritarian vibes. On March 23, new parliament passes Enabling Act, so Hitler can run the country like a dictator. Germany stays in emergency mode for the next 12 years until U2 ends. Hitler used this act of terror to take over, kill millions of people. Today's authoritarians are way more creative with their terror tactics, especially with that Russian regime you gotta love. Okay, Vladimir Putin came to power during a fire, like instant, then exploited terrorist attacks, real, fake, or whatever, to get total control in Russia and crush all opposition. Unknown author, bruh. So like, was Loki running the show in Russia back in 99 when he got appointed PM by Boris Yeltsin's failing government, right? He was hella unpopular fam, but then some buildings got bombed in Russian cities and it was all like, what's good? Secret state police, the cops were so extra that they arrested each other with evidence of their own deceit. Meanwhile, Putin was all like, peace out to the Muslim population in Chechnya and declared war because apparently he was all about seeking revenge for some perceived wrongs. Forward to 2002 when Russia's security forces went hard on civilians in Moscow and suppressed a real terrorist attack at a theater. Talk about a messed up situation. Putin swooped in and took control of private TV, no cap. Then, after that school siege in Beslan in 2004, he got rid of the whole regional governor thing because he wanted to be the man. When Putin came back as president in 2012, started running terror management like it was a real thing, ain't no joke. Ukraine, they basically turned their army into a terrorist force and played dumb about it. They even tried to hack the 2014 election law. Good luck with that. And there was this whole fake terrorist thing in France back in 2015 where Russian hackers took over TV and broadcast ACES like material just for kicks. But Russia didn't stop there, bruh. Germany, they used a family drama to spread hate against Muslims, all because of some Syrian bombing campaign that targeted civilians. The goal was to mess with the democratic system and promote those far-right parties. While Putin was over here like, I'm the real man P, no wonder he's still running Russia. So like this dude, unknown author, is Loki exposing how Russia to turn the us against its own people. Spread in these 6 stories about some Russian girl who was supposedly raped by Muslim immigrants in Germany and then making a whole scene, getting all the right-wing groups hyped about it. But when the cops are like, nah, no rape happened, Russia's all cops are covering up and even gets their diplomats to jump on the bandwagon. And meanwhile, the US press is like, you gotta fight terrorism. But what they really mean is terror management using fake or real terror attacks to keep the people in line. Like, check out this convo between the Prez and Vlad Putin. They're all, let's team up against terrorism. But for real, it's like Putin's trying to get under our skin, so we'll be chill with him. And that's when you gotta step up, fam. The Reichstag fire taught us one thing. If we let fear control us, we'll be slaves forever. But for us, it's about recognizing terror management when we see it and resisting it from the start. It's not about being all brave or nothing. It's about facing the truth. And what even is patriotism, though, ain't dodging the draft or mocking war heroes. It's not discriminating against veterans in your workplace or campaigning to keep them from coming to your house. It's not comparing your search for a partner with someone who actually served in Vietnam. You did that. It's definitely not avoiding taxes or asking others to pay for your campaign. And fam, if you're all about admiring foreign dictators like Gaddafi or Assad or Taliban with Russia's oligarchs, that's just basic. You ain't a real patriot. Unknown author, you lent him about this woman homie who's got ties to Russia and is low-key running a Russian-American energy co. He just so happens to have been awarded the Order of Friendship from Putin. Is like super extra. And point is, fam, we gotta stop thinking that Russia and America are like sworn enemies or whatever the real tea is. Patriotism's all about serving your own country, not being a nationalist is hella different from being a patriot. Nationalist is all about bringing the heat, but it's also super self-centered and doesn't care about what's popping in the real world. You feel nationalism's like relativist vibes, where the only truth is how salty we are when we're looking at others, right? It's all about resentment. But a patriot, they want to see their country lift its game and live up to its ideals. They're all about being the best version of themselves. A patriot cares about the real world, where their country can actually get some love. Things of that, and they got universal values, like they ain't just gonna sit back and let their nation slide. They want to see improvement. Fam, we gotta look at history, bruh. Democracy's been failing left and right in Europe since the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And it's not just happening there, it's all over the world. So we can't be like, it can't happen here, because that's just a recipe for disaster. A patriot says, hold up, it could happen here, but we gon' stop it. You gotta be bold, fam. If nobody's willing to die for freedom, then we all gone end up under tyranny, no cap. You, the politics of inevitability, are straight fire at first glance, though, like it's literally just history, fam. Politicians are low-key, acknowledging that there's a past, present, and future, and even they're cool with acknowledging some wild stuff went down back in the day. When it comes to the present, they're all about how it's just a setup for a brighter future, one where globalization is lit, reason is on fleek, and prosperity is low-key the real me-peep. This is called teleology, bruh. It's like a narrative that's all about moving towards a specific goal, usually something desirable. Communism also had its own teleology, promising some wild socialist utopia that was going to be hella inevitable. Tubba. But then that whole thing went down and we drew the wrong conclusions, lol. Instead of being all like teleologies are trash, we were all about how our own story is the real deal. The politics of inevitability is literally just a self-induced intellectual coma, fam, as long as there was a conflict between capitalist and communist systems, and as long as that whole fascistnessism thing was still on people's minds, Americans had to keep it 100 with history and preserve some basic concepts for imagining the future. But once we accepted inevitability, we were all like, meh, history. If everything in the past follows a known pattern, why bother learning the deets? And politics of inevitability took our convo about politics down a dark path where one party's all about preserving the status quo and another's trying to totally flip it. We're all low-key saying there's no alternative to the current state of affairs, which is basically just a bunch of liquid evil vibes courtesy of Lithuanian thinker Leonidas Donskis. Once we bought into inevitability, critique got all slippery. People were just regurgitating stuff that assumed the status quo was hella unshakable. Some folks critique neoliberalism was usually just a cop-out for the dominant power structure. Others spoke about disrupting things, borrowing from tech jargon or whatever. But when applied to politics, it's all just cool. We're gonna shake things up, but then someone else will come and clean it up. Like, where are the adults in this mess? Who made it, fam? The other anti-historical way of looking at the past is the politics of eternity. It's all about nostalgia for some past moment that never actually happened, during a time that was straight up disastrous. Unknown author brew politicos bring us the past like it's a sick, foggy courtyard of ancient monuments that are low-key, legit victimhood statues, all of ream, equally stuck in the mud, equally ripe for manipulation. Time they hit you with some old reference, it's like an external enemy is coming for your nation's purity, no cap. National populists, they're just eternity politicians, fam. The reference point is like the 1930s when democratic republics were getting destroyed and those Nazi and Soviet dudes were running wild. You feel Brexit was all about this fake British nation state that never actually existed. Bruh. It was a British Empire or Britain in the you pick your poison, no. Separated from the you ain't taken, stuck back to solid ground. It's like leaping into the unknown, gee. We talk about how judges get shaded for saying parliamentary votes are required for Brexit. Some Brit tabloids called them enemies of the people, straight up Stalinist vibes from the 30s. France and Russia, Poland, Hungary, all these leaders are like trying to recreate that sick 1930s glow with their national projects. The American press was low-key flexing the America First slogan back in 2016. It's the name of some committee from Nazi Germany days, fam. His advisor is promised policies that'll be straight fire like the 30s. And when did we last see Make America Great Again? Hint is the same again as never again. Gee, the press thought that regime change in the 1930s style was the solution to all our problems. Now he wants riots to take us back to when we were great. Ain't nobody got time for that. Eternity politics. It's like a seductive, mythicized past that prevents us from thinking about actual futures. Dwelling on victimhood dulls the impulse of self-correction, and since the nation is defined by its inherent virtue, not future potential, get all caught up in good vs evil instead of discussing solutions to real problems. Crisis be permanent, so emergency mode is always on, planning for the future. Like disloyal fam, we can't even think about reform when the enemy is at our gates, bruh. Politics of inevitability. Coma. Politics of eternity, hypnosis, we get caught up in this cyclical myth and do whatever some other dude tells us to do, no cap. The danger now? Tensions be trying to pull a passage from inevitability to eternity politics that's like falling into a trance and get ordered to do something low-key savage. Sure. Let me break it down from a lame democratic republic to a hella confused fascist oligarchy fam. The whole inevitability thing just got smashed and now people are losing their minds. When life shatters or vibes, you gotta find a new way to cope, okay? The path of least resistance leads straight to eternity, though if you ever thought progress was gonna be lit in the end, now you can get all nobody's good and do nothing cause you think time is just a cycle or whatever. Both inevitability, eternity are hella outdated, T-Bay. The only thing holding them back is history, which is like our reality check, bruh. History gives us the tea on patterns, judgment, and freedom, fam. It shows us we can make a change, even if it's just in one moment. Though history makes us responsible for something, not everything. Polish poet Zisa Mios was all about how history keeps loneliness and difference at bay. Now that the inevitability thing got shattered, what'll these young Americans do? Maybe they'll just give up and slide in eternity mode or whatevs. Fam, it's time for them to make their own history and reject the whole inevitability, eternity, trap that older gen set for him. If they don't step up, politicians of eternity will destroy it, and that would be a major bummer. History is not the end, though it's just the start. The time is out of joint. Hamlet said, he was all, come, let's fix this. But we gotta make history happen ourselves, okay? This ebook is copyrighted material. Don't even think about copying or redistributing it without getting permission from the publishers first. Tries uses a whole nother story and you might end up in trouble, fam. Lem break it down for unknown authors, super outdated patents, 1988. Then you just got published by the Bodley Head in 2017. Bruh. Totes first published in the S by Tim Duggan Books, which is part of the Crown Publishing Group in 2017, no cap. So if you want to be extra, W, Penguin, Coke Vintage and get her a SIP catalog record from the British Library Law. Totes first published in the S by Tim Duggan Books, which is part of the Crown Publishing Group in 2017, no cap. So if you want to be extra, W, Penguin, Coke Vintage and get her a SIP catalog record from the British Library Law.